So Malketha is a Hebrew word.
Yeah.
Back in the day, or in the times of the kings and queens of Israel, the person who'd give birth to the next king, because the kings had so many wives, but there was always the one whose child is going to be the king. That person was called Malketha. And the main reason we say that, or the main reason we call ourselves Malketha, is because we're hoping to raise a generation of women, or inspire a generation of women who are raising future kings and queens.
Amazing. Prophetic in its sense, you know. And I love it. I love the word already. And so it's such a blessing to have you in studio.
Thank you.
And you know, why don't we jump right into it? Maternal mental health. What is it?
So mental health in general, it's just like, you know how health is a state of well-being, mentally, physically, and psychologically. So mental health just adds an aspect of, like, more emphasis on the psychological section. And so when we move to maternal mental health, then there we bring in mothers. And of course there's definitions by World Health Organizations and different organizations.
But if you were to explain this to OWW and to our ones.
So I talk about having a mother that is fully empowered, not just physically, but in terms of knowledge, to take her mental health into her own hands. And also knowing what that mental health does to those around her, not just her. You know, so she's able to be productive, she's able to interact with the community, benefit the community, and also benefit herself and her loved ones. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Oh, wow. And this is strictly for mothers?
No, definitely no. This is not strictly for mothers, and this is where I disagree with some of those definitions, because they leave fathers out, and I think fathers are very, very instrumental in maternal mental health, or in maternal health in general, because these are, like you mentioned, you can't have a baby without a father, and not just that. These are the people who are the secondary caregivers to the children, and probably primary caregivers to the mothers. So I feel like maternal health should cover not just the moms, but also the fathers, or even the people who are playing those positions and those roles. Depression, most people ignore it, or people call it baby blues, but there's a very big difference between baby blues and postpartum depression. And how you know that you've gotten into postpartum depression is if it's interfering with your day-to-day progress. So if you usually wake up at 5 and you're able to cook and go to work and do all these things, and suddenly you're taking a longer time to go to get out of bed, or even just looking after your baby, you feel overwhelmed, you're not able to interact, to socialize. So there's a number of signs and symptoms, and some of them are a bit technical, but postpartum depression, I think, is one of the most common. We have a bit of psychosis, we have a bit of bipolar, we've had schizophrenia. So some of them are technical, but they're actually existing.
Is that a place where people say, oh, you hate your baby, you bad,
yes.
You don't like the baby?
Exactly. So you've heard of those stories where someone just decides to throw the baby away. I've heard of extreme stories where mothers kill their own children or kill themselves as well. So sometimes, actually a large percentage of the times, it's because of the mental health illness. You don't know what's happening with you, so you feel like something must be wrong with me, or I'm not going to take care of my baby, so I need to.
So it gets me because yes, I know. It gets me because we're all excited to have babies. I'm just saying generally.
In general, unplanned for changes, loss, or being unable to meet your targets. So disappointments, or even just life. There's so much going on these days that, as you saw in the newspaper, a good number of us Ugandans are living with depression, and people think that number is exaggerated, but as a mental health practitioner, I know it's actually very accurate. It's probably very, very accurate. Most of us have lived with mental health illness so long that you don't even know you're mentally ill. So it's very possible, and especially for mothers, there's a certain stigma around saying you're struggling, that you would rather struggle silently and be like, hey, I'll deal with it. We'll get over this somehow. I'll figure it out. And so there's more, which is for me such a big deal, because these mothers are shaping lives. These lives are going to be our future leaders, future policymakers, future economists, future mothers, mothers and parents themselves. So for me, I feel like that's really, really critical that we empower the mothers because they have such a key role to play, at least in the African setting.
Yeah. Everywhere, please. Where would we be without mothers?
Yeah.
So you mentioned postpartum depression. Any other common mental health challenge?
Yes, so postpartum depression, I also mentioned a bit of psychosis.
Psychosis, yes.
Yes, there's also schizophrenia where you're seeing things that are not
In
really
your own world.
there. Yes, there's bipolar disease where you're either, too happy, yes, or too sad, and a number of other technical, illnesses. I would definitely recommend speaking with a psychiatrist or a psychologist if you suspect that you have some of these.
Okay.
And of course, there's so much information about mental health these days. All you have to do is
use your phone.
Yes, use your phone and see if you suspect or if you think I might have, just check it out. And then there's a number of people that you can reach out to would help.
Yeah.
Right.
But interestingly, when you say there's so much information,
Yeah.
How come this is not?
I was actually doing some research, and it's like there's limited resources that actually exist with information about maternal mental health. It's like so little is known about it. Even when you try to reach out to people in the field to tell you about it, they do tell you that very little is known about it. Why do you think this is so?
I think very little is known about it in general, but even less in the African setting or Ugandan setting or Ugandan context. When I was starting Malketha, I tried to look around, which was one of the reasons that I started. There was such a huge gap in terms of data, in terms of information about context-specific statistics. And so we have, if you look at certain countries, Europe, the more developed countries, because they are so aware of mental health, they've found ways to address mental health issues. So there's something about maternal mental health there. If you come to Uganda and look for any statistic, they'll tell you. I remember once meeting with a group that had done a research about maternal mental health, but not because they wanted to address maternal mental health, because they wanted to address how maternal mental health affects the nutrition of children.
Okay.
And so there's a very, very, very small amount of research, and I think, like I mentioned before, because it's not a priority, we also don't have policies in Uganda that are supporting this kind of research. We don't have funding or resources. We don't have... People are now speaking up a little more about mental health, I think because of COVID and the effects of COVID. But we still don't have so many people talking about maternal mental health. And yet now, with the mothers that I've interacted with and explained to them, this is what we mean, this is what we want to be out there, people are talking a little bit more about it. We have so many stories on our blog of mothers sharing their maternal mental health experiences and issues and how they beat them. And it's really interesting how almost every mother has a story to tell. Some people will tell you, no, I'd like to remain anonymous, but their stories are actually about maternal mental health.
Right.
So that's one of the things that we're trying to do, address that gap, maybe advocate for changing of those policies, and also just interest people in the area,
Right.
that issue.
And just a quick reminder that this, how do you feel Uganda is doing compared to the other African countries?
In my opinion, we've come a really long way. If this was 2 years back, and of course, I guess everything works out for a reason or happens for a reason, because before COVID, there was minimal talk about mental health and, of course, by extension, maternal mental health. And now after COVID, we have all these things springing up. Most of them are addressing mental health, but that's a win for us because either way, mothers are still part of the general population. So I think Uganda is taking the right steps. We've come a long way for sure.
And what is Malketha doing in this season, in this May? Like, what are you doing to actually? Do you have something that you're going to commemorate the mental health awareness? What are you doing as Malketha to spread this message widely during this period, the May that is Mental Health Awareness Month?
So we realize, and now people are starting to talk a lot about it, we realize that the biggest question people are asking is, what's my role? What can I do? I'm not a mental health practitioner, I'm not a health worker, I'm not even a mother. What can I do to support or to help this whole movement? And so we're running a campaign on our socials which is talking about what role do I play. And this is not just for moms, this is not just for NGOs, it's not just for the government, it's for you as an individual, it's for religious organizations, it's for civil society organizations. There's roles that we can all play. We broke it down into about 5. And if you check out our mental health, our social media pages, you'll find more information about that. But to summarize, there's a little bit about, advocating in your places of power. People on radio, you have such a platform. And I think this is really, really good, having people come here and talk about it. You can also change your attitude towards mental health. Most of the people I meet are dismissive. It's not the right time. Or even the language, tells you what kind of attitude they have
When
towards.
you say mental health, like, you are calling me a mad person.
Exactly. I remember one time on a certain outreach, and one of the gentlemen said, one person asked, what's maternal mental health? And another person replied, and this is Logan. Another person replied, abalalu abazala abana. I was like, why people laughed, and I was like, this is why Malketha is here. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And also you can, raise awareness, which is what we're doing. You can reach out to mothers that are struggling, or parents that are struggling. And reaching out doesn't necessarily mean give money, because sometimes that's not the need. Sometimes it's just to be there, listen, ask the questions.
Support,
yes. Take the child so that I can have a day off, or support the people who are doing something. So there's a number of different ways that you can contribute to this movement that might not require you to have so much knowledge or be a player in this sector.
Wow.
You as a parent, or you as a father, you're also important, right? It's not just about your child, even you are important. And so the first person who's affected by maternal mental health, of course, is the mom. And this means that your life is really thrown, of course, in every way that you can think of, right? And then we also think, of course, about the children in terms of the community. So if I'm a mother, just imagine if I'm a mother who doesn't know what's going on. I'm raising a child. My cup is empty, because you can't pour out of an empty cup. I'm facing certain issues. I don't know what these issues are. I don't know who to go to for help, but I also don't know that it's affecting the way I'm raising my child. And we all know how, we talk about the first 100 days are the most important days of a child's life, early childhood development, the first 5 years, and how those 5 years shape the child's future and the trajectory of everything that they'll do. And in Uganda, the truth is that people who are most present during that time are actually mothers. So if you have a mother who's dealing with her own mental health issues, there's no way she's going to do the best she can do for the child. And so this means that you're raising children who, have not gotten optimum care. And like I said earlier, these are people who are going to lead us. This is why we see so many adults. We need help, basically. And so I look at that in terms of community. What kind of community are we raising? What kind of parents are we raising? And also in terms of economy. I don't have to go into the details of how, the women, the workforce, how many billions of dollars they contribute to GDPs of different countries. But I can assure you that a productive woman contributes so much to the economy of a country. And so if she's not productive or she's not healthy, the economy is also losing in more ways than one.
Wow.
How exactly do you deal and relate with the people who come your way at Malketha?
Interesting question. So Malketha has two legs. One is the for-profit side, or the business side, because we need to be sustainable in order to continue doing what we do. And then the other section is the non-profit section. So the for-profit section, or the business side, is where we provide maternal services, and this is prenatal, or antenatal, and also postnatal. And so these are family planning, doula services, baby showers, anything to do with preparing to give birth to your child, anything around pregnancy. We do mother spas, because it's mother-centered, so most of our services are to ease the life of the mom or to prepare her for the coming baby. And then on the not-for-profit side, we have outreaches, sensitization, empowerment, trainings, all sorts of different ways to empower women. And sometimes this includes fathers, this includes health workers, this includes even talking to policymakers. We've worked with government, we've worked with the NGOs. We do outreaches within Kampala and also outside of Kampala. And we also have a place where mothers can share their stories, not just to understand that they're not alone, but also to give tips to other mothers about how they made it through. And I think that for me, that specific space has emphasized and confirmed the need for this maternal mental health activities, because almost all the mothers that we deal with tell you, I didn't know that happened to you too, I didn't know this is how you found your way out here. So we have that non-profit side, and then we have the business side. And if you'd like to know more about Malketha, you can go to our website, which is malkethabirthservices.com.
Wow, that's such a